faster, more cost-effective project-based results. Gus is a recognized portfolio and project management expert who has published many popular articles and books on the subject and is frequently asked to present and teach topics of interest in project management. Gus?
Thanks, Daniel, and good afternoon, everyone, and probably good morning for a few. Thanks for being here today. So I will start off with our agenda, and we have a pretty simple agenda today. We started with the concept of the David Letterman top 10 questions, and we actually probably could slice and dice it a lot of different ways. And we came up with the top 5 questions, but I think you'll see that there's questions within questions here. We're going to start off with a glossary of terms. It's pretty extensive, and it really forms the foundation of what we're trying to get through today in terms of clearing the air on some of the terminology between on-premise and off-premise and in the cloud and Office 365 and all that business. We'll compare on-premise versus Microsoft hosting in the cloud. We'll talk about approaches to be successful with this, the partnering model, and how to get started. We'll give you some parting gifts as we always do. We'll give you some links and some things you can download, and a copy of the slides will be available in PDF version. And as Dan mentioned, we have about 45 minutes of content, we think. We did want to give the opportunity for people to interact throughout the presentation. We're going to encourage that with a poll in just a minute here. And also the question and answer console. And Daniel will be monitoring that console. So if we get a live question on a topic relevant to what we're covering, we'll cover it. If we're going to cover it, we'll let you know we're going to cover it, and we'll kind of take it on that way. So if we have no questions, we may be done 45 minutes after the hour, but let's see how it goes. So the first poll question is, are you planning to move to Project Online? So on your console, you should see a poll question in a moment, and you have 5 choices. We'll give you 30 seconds or a minute to contemplate if you're moving to Project Online. If you're not sure what Project Online is, because we haven't gone through the glossary yet, this would be hosted in the Microsoft Cloud. When we talk about on-premise, typically that's going to be something to do with Project Server inside the company's firewall, if you will. So we'll look at the results in a moment. Your answers will be tallied and summarized. We're not going to display your name on the screen or anything like that. We will show a bar chart that gives a total of who answered what, not who, the total aggregate answer for those 5 questions. And there we have our results. So we've got we have a number of folks that are on premise and planning to stay there, some that are going to other places, some going soon, some going within the year, and some who are already there that hopefully, I guess, are learning to. Hopefully, you'll learn something new today. Okay, thank you for participating in our poll. We have a few more coming along. So what we really want to focus on at the moment is this hodgepodge of terminology you see coming across your screen at the moment, and we want to kind of break it down and get into what these things are. So we're going to go ahead and try to break this down and organize these terms into something that makes sense for us. And then the first thing you're going to hear us talking about is project in the cloud, and you're going to hear terminology almost immediately that has to do with Office 365. So from a terminology standpoint, I guess the other thing I can tell you is we'll do some demonstrations. This is a screen capture that you would see, and in this case, this would be what a user would see. And if you look at the lower right-hand corner, My Apps is what I've subscribed to. So Office 365 is the Office products available in the cloud, meaning you can go to a browser, you can log in, and you can access these products. So you see Outlook and Calendar and People and Yammer and OneDrive and Sites and projects. Okay, we'll click on that one a little bit. We see tasks and business intelligence, and I'm not going to read everything on the screen, but you'll see here that this is how we get there. And in the spirit of showing you some real stuff, when you go to, in this case, if you look at the URL up here, it says login.microsoftonline.com. Okay, so if you go there, as I've done, now in this case, it remembers the different folks that have been on this computer logging into the Microsoft Office 365 account. So if I wanted to log in for me, I can see it's going to give me a login account, and I'm not going to log in as me because I'm going to go to our demonstration environment. So from our demonstration environment, what I did was I had logged into project, but I clicked this set of icons, and you can see here for this account, for our demonstration account, you can see the various subscriptions or applications that I have. What's the point? Well, the point is we're about to talk about what Microsoft Project is in the cloud, and one of the things it is an application that lives with many other applications, which is quite the advantage. Okay? For example, we use SharePoint. Okay? So this is not a SharePoint demonstration, but this is a demonstration of, oh, gee, if I'm in Office 365, maybe I might want to go not just to Microsoft Project, but maybe I might want to go to our company portal. So while I'm working in Microsoft Project, I can also go see some shared documents or some test documents or some training materials or some other things that we might want to take a look at, the calendar, etc. Library for proposals. I can go to general company information. Okay, we can look at some document plans, etc., etc. I click back here. I want to go to Microsoft Project, and I'm able to go right to our home page for our Microsoft Project demonstration site. I'll come back here, but just to remind you, we're on question 1, which is what do all these terms mean? And what I'm answering for you is what is Office 365? And the fast answer is a group of Office applications, Microsoft Office applications that are accessible in the cloud through a browser. We'll talk about subscriptions and pricing and some of that business as we go through the rest of the presentation. Okay, so some more glossary terms. Project in the cloud. Let's talk about that for a minute. And one of the things I want to be clear about is, do we even know what hosted and SaaS and in the cloud means? So again, if I go back to slide 10, one of the things I want to talk about is are these 3 things here: cloud, hosted, and software as a service. Okay, so software as a service typically is thought of as a software subscription. Subscription meaning you pay maybe a monthly fee, and you could, in parentheses, maybe say HAAS, because it's also hardware as a service. So SaaS is software as a service, meaning you're paying for it as an internet-based service that you can access through a browser. And when I, for example, log into Project, I'm also getting the hardware that software sits on. We'll talk about that some more. Hosted, usually, I shouldn't even say usually, sometimes means that your software that you own, that you've licensed, that you've purchased outright, is sitting on somebody else's hardware. That does some hosting services will also rent you or give subscriptions to things like Project Pro for Office 365, which we'll talk about in a moment. The cloud is typically the idea of having hardware and software off premises or outside of your company's firewall. Or even if you had servers in your home, you might have some things outside of your home that you would consider being in the cloud. Office 365, while I'm going back through the slide again, also is something you can use just to rent Office. You know, if you want Word, PowerPoint, Excel, those kinds of things. Certainly, for example, one of the things I've seen Microsoft promoting is college-age children who are going away from home that may be on multiple different devices but need to access things like Microsoft Word to write their papers. So this might be a reason you might go in the cloud, even for personal reasons. Okay, so let's talk about Project. That's why we're here, cloud-based. What I want to talk about is this premise versus the cloud, Office 365, Project Online, hosted software as a service. And what you're seeing here, this information is an extract from the Microsoft website. If you Google, or preferably Bing for Microsoft's browser, project server or project in the cloud or project online or some of these other terminologies, you'll eventually get to a page that talks about typical project cloud-based solutions, excuse me, things that are licensed on a per user basis, and things that you can purchase standalone or as an additional service plan. What does that mean? Well, let's talk about this. Project Online. Project Online is project server in the cloud. Okay, so if you're familiar with the concept of project server that has the database and the access to SharePoint and enables you to access using a client license either from Project Pro or from Project Web Application to the server, we would know that in the cloud as Project Online. Okay, so if you hear Project Online, think about Project Server, but it's not on your company's computers. It's hosted on the Microsoft cloud. Okay, so it says enables organizations to get started, prioritize project portfolio investments, and deliver the intended business value from virtually anywhere. So you can come in through the browser or through Project Pro. Let's talk about that. So Project Online is something you're gonna pay for on a monthly basis. Now, by the way, notice it says licensed on a per user basis and can purchase as standalone plans or as an additional service for Office 365. So if you don't have Office 365, for example, for SharePoint, for Outlook, which I didn't talk about, and I'll show you, for Office, for other Microsoft Office applications, you can use this just for project. Okay. The other thing I'll talk about in a slide or two is some of these things I'm talking about renting Project Online or the server. And in this case, if I'm using Project Online, I'm probably a user who might be either a stakeholder or a team member, and I'm paying for a Project Online license. If I'm using Project Pro for Office 365, it's Project Pro as you've known it. And if you don't know Project Pro, it's Microsoft Project as you know it, with a server awareness or a project server capability. In this case, it gives you the capability to use the scheduling engine. It's always up to date because it's a subscription from Office 365. It's project on the desktop, if you will, but it's paid for on a subscription basis. And by the way, typically, in the cases we've seen with our customers, is being used to connect to Project Online. However, that's not a requirement. You can pay a subscription for Project Pro and connect it to an on-premise project server that you own. So if you own Project Server, but you don't want to pay an upfront investment to buy a Project Pro license directly, you can pay a subscription model. I'll show some pricing in a moment. Project Lite, if you're familiar with the concept of Project Web Application or the browser client access license, or the CAL, C-A-L, there's a Lite version of this where it's a limited amount of things that you can do for team members to manage tasks, collaborate, and submit timesheets. So there are some capabilities from the full-blown Project Web App, for example, accessing the scheduling engine, which is becoming richer and richer of an experience from the browser to do what Project Pro can do, like link to tasks to create a critical path. You wouldn't expect to see that on Project Lite. Again, all three of these products typically in the cloud, connecting to Project Online, which is Project Server in the cloud, but each of these three are available. Project Online as a PWA access to an on-premise server, Project Pro for Office 365, monthly payment to Project Server, Project Lite, a Lite version also to the on-premise software. So on-premise, this is sort of the traditional software sales model. Many large companies and even small companies have what's called a large account reseller agreement or a volume agreement, or what's often called an enterprise agreement. Enterprise meaning you're probably seeing Windows and Office on every desktop. Okay, so that was called a volume licensing agreement. If it's not enterprise on every desktop, project oftentimes is purchased on something what's called a select agreement, meaning it's only on selected desktops, like maybe just the project managers. So So we need, so we would have Project Server, and then what we really have is a license or a client access license required for each person or device accessing Project Server. And so Project Web Access is the way we're going to access the server. If I have Project Pro, that comes with a Project Web Access license. What's that mean? I'm going to run the browser. I'm going to come in from Project Web Access. I'm going to run the browser. It's going to look like the browser, right? So if I go to Project and I want to use my browser and I want to see my request or my resources or my timesheet or my approval or my tasks, I'm using Internet Explorer in this case. And so that's what I mean by a client access license. I need a license to use this browser. Yeah, I have a URL, but I also need a license to access the server. So let's talk about the on-premise traditional Project Server. Okay, so this is the server license that an organization would buy, typically hosted on purchased hardware by our customers. Right? So if you work for a large company, your customers are your employer is buying the hardware and buying the software. Project Professional, this is, again, the scheduling engine with the capability to connect to Project Server. And in this case, we're calling it Project Pro 2013. We're not calling it Office 365 because this is a direct outright purchase of the Project Professional license. I'm not paying a monthly rental model. Notice it says includes a Project Server 2013 PWA CAL. The PWA stands for Project Web Application. And you may be familiar with the concept of CAL, Client Access License. If you buy Exchange and want to connect from Outlook, that would be a Client Access License. SQL Server has Client Access Licenses, and things like Microsoft Project have Client Access Licenses. Project Standard is Project as we knew it before there was a server. It's the scheduling engine on the desktop. It doesn't have a capability to connect to the server. I'll give you an example here. If I were to click on the Microsoft Project icon, let me close this. I'm going to go ahead and click on Project. And if you had Standard, this screen would not come up. You're not being asked, do you want to go on the server? Do you want to go local? You're just going to be local. Right? If I'm using Project Pro, as I am here, we can see I have the capability to go to our instance of Project Server, Project Online in the cloud. In this case, it says projectsystems1.sharepoint.com. That is a hosted Microsoft site that we can publish our projects to. Okay? All right. Let's see. Let's check my notes. Yep, I think we covered that already. So this is all the things I talked about on one slide, although PWA isn't mentioned here because it says it's server on premises and find a partner. And all you got to do is look straight down. There's the partner you want right there, Project Assistant. So we would be somebody who would help you through the hosting on premises. By the way, you know, the difference, if you buy Project Server versus Project Online, in both cases, you're still going to get a server that's not configured. So we'll talk about the services we provide, and sort of once you have it, when we get to getting started, we'll talk a little bit about what do you do once you have either Project Server or Project Online. You can see the pricing here. Okay, so I'll give you an example. For our demo environment, if you were coming in, let's say you wanted a demo environment or a real environment, and you were a project manager, you want to pay a monthly subscription, you'd pay $25 a month for Project Pro on a monthly basis. And then if I wanted to connect that, I could just use this without connecting to the server. But once I connect to the server, I would also have a cloud subscription to the server, Project Online. So a project manager publishing projects to the server, paying a monthly fee, would pay $25 plus $33, $58 a month. Now, if I want to buy a project outright, if I want to pay my money up front, and we'll talk about the payment options and what some of the examples are, I'm going to pay $1159.99. That's probably a retail price. If you work in an organization that has an enterprise agreement and you have a volume pricing, you would find out your price, or your organization would know your price from the enterprise agreement that you made with Microsoft, and you would buy project as a 1159 outright purchase, cash on the barrelhead up front, or loans to a bank, or however your company pays for its software. The next one we have is Project Standard, and again, just like Project Pro, Project on the desktop, and it's about, you can see it half the price, and it has the basic scheduling engine, but not a capability to publish to the server. Project Lite, $7 a month compared to Project Online. So if you want a full-blown browser access, client access license, they can do some of the extended capabilities of Project Online. You'll pay $33 a month. This would be a user who wants full-blown capabilities, except for the scheduling engine on the desktop. So today we're not going to get into all the differences, but I can show you some of the differences for what you would do on Project Online. As a matter of fact, while I'm thinking of it, I'll take you there right now. So if I had wanted to click on projects, and I have a full-blown license, and I wanted to open a project. Okay, so open the biothermal heating system, and if I wanted to do something like use the scheduling engine, what I can do is, if I click on project, you would see a menu here that starts to look somewhat familiar, especially if you start talking about, hey, I want to do something with tasks. And now we see baselining, we see inserting tasks. If I highlight two tasks, we would see, usually, I'm not sure why it's not doing this, light up the link. Oh, they're already linked, that's why it's not lit up. So if I wanted to link two tasks, I could use my control key and sort of link some of those tasks. You can see the outlining capabilities. Okay, so what's the point? The point is, I'm in the browser with a client access license. I'm not using Project Pro, but I have some scheduling engine capabilities that used to live exclusively in the desktop scheduling engine. So what does that mean? Well, what that means is, if you feel like that's something you want to be able to do from the browser, you're going to be using Project Online. You're going to be going into your project server in the cloud called Project Online. You're going to be using your Project Web App license, which is what I was just showing, my browser capability to open that project plan, and I'm using scheduling engine capabilities. Okay, if you don't need those capabilities, there's an inexpensive license. Let's say you have 100 people who are just going to submit timesheets. Okay, Project Lite. And then obviously Project Server is the one we install for our customers right on your hardware. Okay, question number 4. Should I choose Project Online or Project Server 2013 on premises? And you can see here we've got the more filled in the circle, green is excellent, the half filled in circle is good, an open circle is average, below average is unacceptable. And you can see we're going to talk about 7 different perspectives on why would I do this, right? So let's start with short-term cost. Let's see if I missed anything here. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, there was one other thing I wanted to say. I'll just reiterate this. There's $33 a month. There's $25 a month. There's $7 a month. They are things. All 3 of these licenses can be bought outright. But again, if you're on premise and you don't want to buy PWA outright for whatever it is, $250, you can pay. I'm sorry, the full-blown version, $33. You can pay for that on a monthly subscription. Okay. So while we think of Project Lite, Project Online, and Project Pro for Office 365 as cloud subscriptions, these are also available as monthly subscriptions, not just at the cloud, but to an on-premise. Okay, let's talk about short-term cost. When we go on-premise, when we go online, we're not buying hardware. It's hosted on Microsoft's cloud, which Microsoft has the hardware. There's not a software installation cost, so if you hire project assistants to implement Project Server on your premises, you're going to spend a day or 2 or 3 with our systems engineer and your system engineers connecting SharePoint, SQL, Windows Server, Project Server, etc. Okay, so that's all done. Monthly software subscription fees only, so that's all you pay. And obviously, instead of paying something like $1,200 up front for a Project Pro license, you can spend $58 a month over time. Okay? On-premise, the upfront hardware infrastructure implementation cost is there, unless you own the hardware. The upfront software license purchase is required, and the software installation cost, which is not significant but is an add-on. If you look at the difference in our proposals to our customers of us supporting the implementation of an on-premise versus in the cloud, the primary differentiator is we're not standing up the server. It's already stood up. Okay, but many of the other tasks, which we'll talk about in a few slides, still need to happen. Like you might want to get trained, for example. What else was I going to say here? So typically it wouldn't surprise you that if you're looking to minimize your upfront investment, online is the answer. So what's the question? What's the most obvious question? And the answer to that would be, what about my long-term cost? So we're talking about short-term cost, and typically the cloud wins the short-term cost. The high numbers could present an exception, right? So if you had a very significant number of users, a number of project managers, you might start seeing the on-premise nip the numbers or start to break even comes a lot sooner. Okay, how about long-term? Well, it's kind of the other way around, right? So with online, you're going to pay the subscription fees as long as you own it, and if you're going to have it 5 years, 10 years, you're going to pay subscription fees for 5 to 10 years. It's almost like paying for a car up front versus riding the bus every day, I guess, or paying for a lease that never ends. Or maybe using a Hertz car might be a better example because you can bring it back. On-premise, you're going to pay the software maintenance fees only. And that assumes you have something called software assurance. If you go without software assurance, there's not even maintenance fees. Maintenance fees get you fixes. They also get you. And ultimately, you may need to upgrade hardware infrastructure and some other things. But typically, when we're talking about on-premise, from a long-term standpoint, on-premise is going to win from a number standpoint. Eventually, the cost, the break-even point crosses with online, and so long-term would mean beyond the break-even point in many cases. Again, very low numbers in this case might delay break-even, right? So if you're paying a lot for hardware up front, you got a really small number of users. The economic model changes. Support. Let's talk about support. With support on online or in the cloud, we're going to get backup and recovery automatic. Disaster recovery is taken care of. Guaranteed uptime. Technical support, limited internal technical support is required, so that's all sort of baked in there. On-premise, you got to do the backup and restores, but you do have access to the logs. So we had something happen, and we're hosted in Microsoft Cloud Office 365 for email, and something happened last week, and we're not quite sure what it was. We can go. I'll show you an example of this. If I was Project Online, if I was in MicrosoftOnline.com, I'm going to see if I can sneak in there and show you something here without messing up the login I've already done. Try not to log in and log out, so let's see what happens. So I'm going to the portal. Now, I'm an administrator. I'm not seeing it here. I'll show it towards the end. There's a console that shows health, and the point of this is when we own the on-premise implementation, we can really get some detailed logging capabilities to see what's going on at a transaction level in many cases. We're not going to get that access as a subscriber to the online in most cases. Okay, upgrade. So with upgrade, what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about two things. One would be service packs, for example. So service packs are typically fixes cumulative fixes, cumulative updates, to bugs, right? All software has some level of bugs or errors or something that's not working as expected. And oftentimes we have a decision to make whether or not we feel we're ready to make the move, and it could be disruptive, and what if something goes wrong? Well, this is something Microsoft worries about, right? On-premise, you got internal IT resources. There's a cost to that, which is the downside. The upside is you get greater control over the upgrade timetable. So if you don't want a service pack and you're in the cloud, you're getting it anyway. I don't mean to present that as a problem. It's not for me. Some organizations have a policy. We're going to wait for a service pack to be 3 months old because a service pack fixes 1,000 things and breaks 100 things, and we want to not see those 100 things randomly happen to us. So it's a philosophy. And again, it's, the answer to many of these questions of should I go online or on-premise, the answer is it depends what's most important to you, right? So it's a series of trade-offs that we're trying to figure out. Security. So there is an ISO standard, International Standards Organization has a standard 27001, which is easily referenced, but it's a pretty tight global standard for securing IT systems, and so Project Online is certified. It has a HIPAA Business Associate Agreement. If you're in the healthcare industry, HIPAA is important, as you know, for privacy and protection of records with patients and their related information. And then also the Federal Information Security Management Act also is complied with. So that comes with, when you pay your $25 or $7 or whatever it is, this is all baked in, right? If you're on-premise, obviously that part of the cost of on-premise is the cost of the infrastructure as well as the personnel and the expertise required to worry about this. And by the way, as we're thinking about this, this also involves physical security as well, right? So many data centers are well secured physically, but again, from an ISO standard, the question is, are we up to the standard that Microsoft is able to provide? Large companies, I would say, in most cases, probably yes, but again, the security means both physical and electronic security, cyber security. All right, so let's talk about functionality. With online, you can work virtually anywhere, anytime, any device. That includes Project Pro for Office 365, right? So if you get to a device that doesn't have Project sitting on the desktop, you can get it downloaded and use it. So if you're in an internet cafe, if you're in somebody else's computer, you've got the subscription rights, you can log in and get it. Okay, SQL reporting system integration with a third-party package, so that's some functionality. That wasn't there when Project first came out, so that's an add-on, that's an upgrade. And obviously the seamless integration with Office 365. We're just responding to a request for proposal from one of our customers, and they're saying, can we get the SharePoint from Project? And as you may recall, I showed that it's really sort of quite easy. If you want to go from Project here, you want to go to SharePoint, you go here. We certainly have spent some time with our customers that don't have internal folks that know how to do that seamless integration. So that can be a challenge for some organizations, especially for smaller organizations. The one thing you do get on-premise, and we see in this case, I guess I should be declaring winners here, right? When we see the full circle, that means excellent versus good. Okay, so we see a flip-flop here on functionality. You get greater functionality on-premise for a number of reasons, right? You get the ability to connect your data and applications, third-party software, homegrown software, whatever it happens to be. If it's on your server, you have greater flexibility in terms of how you integrate to that data and to that application. All right. We're coming to the finish line on question number 4, integration. So there's some plug-in software out there. There is a sort of an ecosystem in the cloud. But the reality is Project on-premise at the moment is more open to accommodate interfaces with third-party software. There's Team Foundation server integration if you're having your developers manage source code and that kind of business, and some of the tasks that are associated around the development world, the application development world. We can see some of that there. Out-of-office integration with your calendar, also on-premise. Time to implement. So, you know, you could, while we were on this webinar, you could be, and you may have done already, set up the project server, or at least get access to project server. No installation training required. But I would say that, and I'll get to this as I mentioned, there are other things that need to happen from an administrative standpoint in terms of configuring. Okay, but in terms of obtaining, provisioning, if you will, access to the server, that can happen pretty fast. The slowdown potentially on-premise is hardware access, actually buying hardware. Sometimes the procurement process can be filled with barriers. Sometimes it's not. You may have hardware already. You've got to decide. Many organizations are using Hyper-V or other virtual server capabilities. So, you know, maybe you can provision a chunk on your server and get it there. Oftentimes, SQL Server's in a farm, so we get access with our customers on-premise to existing SQL capabilities. But also the acquisition of software is also something to be considered. Okay, so it says reader approach. We recommend the creation of an implementation roadmap. We'll talk about that soon. Okay, so we're going to get to the, okay, you got the software, you got the technology, you got an F-16 or an F-22 Raptor sitting on the runway. Do you know how to fly it, right? Or do you need some kind of a flight plan? And we'll talk about that soon. Okay, so we have a poll. And since I defined Office 365, we have a simpler poll here, which is 3 questions. So you should be seeing a poll on your screen if you're currently using Office 365. Yes, no. No, but soon. Okay. There is between either you versus no. So soon and have to go on there. Yeah. One and the missing coming are for the last one. Question number 3, how do you ensure the value of the investment? Okay, I got it. I get it. I saw all this terminology. I've acquired the licenses, the hardware, the subscriptions, whatever, on-prem, off-prem, whatever I've decided. I'm saying off-prem as premise, on-prem as on-premise. So off-prem would be outside of your firewall, which means in the cloud, Office 365. So how do you ensure the value of this investment? What is this investment? We're showing down here the portfolio sort of strata, if you will, of the creating, selecting, planning, and managing process of portfolio management, and then the actual project execution for reporting and resource management and all that business. Okay, so we're talking about how do we get the value of what portfolio and project management does for an organization. And there are some questions. This is a big one, and I think it's one of the most underrated things that we see clients doing. Are you successfully able to manage projects individually? Can you do it on the desktop? Do you know what the scheduling engine does? Somewhere in the middle of this whole discussion today is a project manager who has to know how to build a plan and get it published. Right? If we're going to put it either in Project Server on-premise or Project Pro for Office 365, Project Online, you know, it doesn't do us any good if we can't build an effective project plan. And here's where the rub is. We hear customers telling us we have a lot of really experienced project managers who have been using projects since whatever, 98, 2000, 10 years, 5 years. But what we really see is oftentimes that's for planning a schedule, planning dates. Getting beyond that can be pretty significant. Getting beyond, okay, I'm planning it for dates, but now I'm going to baseline and track those dates. That can be a big deal. and we'll, as a matter of fact, we'll talk about our next webinar when we get to the end here, but we're going to talk about that in the next 30 days or so. And even more difficult for a group of project managers is getting beyond the Gantt chart, getting beyond the schedule, getting to labor and cost, resource management, a really big deal. And for most people, you know, if we've got 25 project managers and we're trying to see a dashboard that gives me an accurate look at balancing capacity versus demand for our resources, it can be and often is a big deal to ensure that folks are successful in their individual plans. So we see that it's not accidental that that's our first question. Are you able as an organization across all of your projects to manage projects one by one by one? Okay? Are the right processes in place? You know, there may not be a standard for how projects are managed. You know, do we really baseline? Do we have a standard set of phases? Do we have an organizing principle for how we put our work breakdown structures? Do we have templates? Do we have reporting capabilities and escalation and all the things that go with this, including governance when I say escalation? Not only are we checking the status, but is there a set of rules that guide how we deal with a project that's in trouble, how we support our project managers, how we get this to management, how we respond, okay? And not only do we have the process, but is it actually implemented and adopted, right? So when we talk about maturity, which I'll talk about in a moment, we talk about not only does the process exist, but is it adopted? So we measure both rigor and adoption, as well as degree of difficulty. Difficult processes are hard to get adopted. We can write them, but getting them adopted is much different. Okay, are your processes ready to be harmonized at the enterprise level? So maybe we have them on a project-by-project basis, but are we ready to harmonize like an orchestra to bring all these instruments together and make them play a nice symphony? Okay, so that's what we mean by harmony. All right, so what we recommend is you know, sort of three phases. You know, have a vision of where we're trying to get to, get a good idea of what we think our future state is going to be, right? So what do we mean by that? What's our current process versus what the future is going to look like? What's our current use of technology? And what I just talked about, you know, are we really ready from a project manager by project manager basis to embrace this technology? What about project management methodology itself? You know, do we have project managers that understand project management? Sometimes the answer is no, for at least some of our folks. And then there's also what I call adult supervision or the governance. You know, what do we do to support our project managers? How do we lead our project leaders? And so what this boils down to is this idea of assessing the current state, defining a clear path to the future state, understanding how wide that gap is, getting a vision of or a set of activities prioritized, and putting them into a roadmap, which I call the project. What's the project plan to get project management more effective, to increase the rigor, to get the results that we expect from a project management solution? Okay, and so you know, we want to understand what our current state is, which is what the analysis findings are. Visioning is a workshop that says, here's where we are, here's where you said you want to get to, but do we understand all the sophisticated steps we have to do to get to that future state? We analyzed 14 separate disciplines, and as it turns out, not surprisingly, some of these movements towards more rigorous disciplines layer upon one another. They have to be done in some sequence. It doesn't happen in weeks or months, it happens in quarters and years. So how do we lay out that roadmap, which is the bottom piece, so that when we get to implementation, we think about implementing that future state so that we have the processes harmonized and aligned with the technology. We have the people skills and the training, not only about the tool, but about the capabilities from a theoretical project management PMBOK, if you will, or Prince 2, which I saw an announcement on today. And then governance as a process is this configuration requirements, process alignment, software install config, or software provisioning, if you will, if you're in project online, customization and education. So this is the, oh, gee, I got my software, but now what do I do with it? And we say, well, you know, let's have a plan for how we're going to harmonize, and let's have a plan for how we're going to get implemented so that we can come out with an implemented solution and governance procedures so that we actually do change management. That's what we mean by adoption, right? What's the process improvement? What's the ongoing operation of the technology integrated with the processes? What's the ongoing measure and report from a portfolio standpoint? And so these are formal processes that we support for our customers. So the VIA methodology is a proprietary project assistance methodology, and so answer to the question, how do I get the value, which was the question here, how do you ensure the value of the investment? The answer is we think about it before we do it, and once we do it, meaning just standing up the technology, that's not good enough, right? We've got to get it adopted. Okay, so question number one, what value does the partnering model provide? You might have noticed, and this is the one thing that kind of jumps out at me, if you were on the website for Microsoft and you saw back on slide 14, you saw it said find a partner. This is kind of what they're saying. It's like, hey, we give you the products and we give you the online services and the hosting, but if you really want to get something out of this, Microsoft, works in cooperation with partners like Project Assistance. We've been doing this 1996. When 2002 came out, we had 6 years of experience as an organization dealing with the stuff we've seen forever. The bundling engine, right? Doing Project Server is really just an exercise in futility, or what I call software becomes shelfware. And so, we're there to get you there. And that's what it's about. Well, no presentation that doesn't finish. We see it adopted. Hey, we gave you the training. We see it. So how do you get us is design, it delivers the expected value, and it can. Okay, so what do we see? We see without an implementation that has vision and adoption, we see, I'm not sure who's not muted, but if you wouldn't mind mute, that would be helpful. Thank you. Technology-focused implementations without the thinking phase and the adoption phase become shelfware. Right? With the vision phase, we see 75%. With implementation with vision and adoption, we'll guarantee it. Okay, if you hire us to do all three phases, we'll guarantee that you'll get the value. Okay, so how many people have seen this thing in action? I'm just curious about that. So our poll is, have you seen this tool in action? Have you seen Project Online other than the few minutes I did a while back? Okay. Wow. I wasn't sure there was going to be an interest in seeing this. We didn't ask you, are you interested in seeing it? Maybe we could have said that too, but I'm going to assume for the 76 that haven't seen it, would like to see it. So the first thing I'll do is when I click on the project icon, I'm going to be asked if I want to work just sort of locally on my computer or whether I want to connect to the server. I'm going to go locally and just show you something. Okay, so if you bought Project Pro for Office 365, this is what you would see. If you bought Project Pro for licensing, this is what you would see. There's really no difference. Here's the difference. You pay or you subscribe. It's the same product. Okay, the difference between Project Pro for Office 365 and Project Professional 2013 is that you're paying a monthly versus upfront. Matter of fact, it's called Project Pro for Office 365. Notice it's not called Project 2013, right? If you're paying monthly and a new release comes out, you get the new release. You just keep paying, right? If you've got 2013 and 2016 comes out, or 2017 or 2020, your $1,200 is going to be spent again, right? But either way, once you either pay the subscription or you pay for the license, this is what you get. So here's what I want to show you. If I go to File, Info, there's something called Manage Accounts. If you were on Project Standard, you wouldn't have this button, okay? Okay, is my screen show? It is now, okay. Okay, sorry about that. So, yeah, so I did a File, Info. If I click on Manage Accounts, I see an account called projectassistance1.sharepoint.com. I click on Properties. Okay, whether I have Project Pro 2013, I bought a license, whether I have Project Pro for Office 365, if I publish, I decide where I'm publishing. If this was an on-premise solution, it might say something like www.projectassistance.com/PWA, because that's our URL. We own it. That's our computer, and we control it. Okay. In this case, you see, it says the project server is SharePoint.com. Well, guess who owns that? Right. So we're in the Microsoft Cloud, and so what you're seeing here is whether I pay a subscription for Pro or I buy it outright, I can connect to on-premise, or in this case, to the cloud. Okay, what does that mean? Well, if I had a project plan that I wanted to open, okay, like for example, the critical path, and I wanted to publish this, I could save it out to the server. If I was connected to the server and I did a file save as, I can go ahead and put this out on the server. And once I put it on the server, I would see an additional choice here that would say publish. Okay, so that's other than that, project works like you would expect project to work. Okay, for example, if I'm in Microsoft Project and I want to see the critical path, I can go to the network diagram and I can zoom out and see what my critical path looks like. Okay, so that's project, right? The only real difference here is once I love it and I'm ready to tell the world about it, I'm going to publish it and put it out on either Project Online through the Microsoft Cloud or Project On Premises to Project Server. So let's go to the cloud. I'm going to go here. Okay, so what I did originally, let's just sort of go backwards here. I was on the home page. I can click my logo. That's configurable as an administrator. Okay, so if I'm an administrator, I'm going to have something called server settings. All right, so when I mention things like potentially us helping you get your server configured, we would be expert on what all this stuff means, right? How do I lock down a baseline? How do I add users? How do I change the look and feel of some of the screens? How do I build views with filters? How do I add columns? You can see there's things like workflows and all different kinds of things here. Okay, so that's the administrative piece. If I go to projects, that's the project piece. And if I go to dashboards, and we're running out of time, so I'm going to be quick here. I'm going to go to the portfolio dashboard. And in this case, so I already have one open here, I think. Yeah, there it is. An example of the dashboard. I can change the time scales. I can look at all different things. Okay. So that's just a quick peek. That's a teaser. So how do you get started? Well, we kind of talked about this, right? Select a partner. I have a good idea. Logos on your screen. Define the processes, right? So before we go to the technology, what's our process going to be? What's our project management process? How are we going to build a portfolio? How are we going to select and approve projects? How are we going to get them out there? How are we going to track them? How are we going to look at variances? Choose an implementation approach. Decide online or offline. And it says select partner first, so we help you. Okay, acquire the license or the subscription. We can help with that as well. And by the way, the thing I didn't put down here is how do you get finished? And the answer was back on when we talked about the VIA methodology, right? That's how you really get up and see the value. Okay, so as we come down to the close here, you can let us know if you want us to follow up with you. We'll give you some contact information as well, but if you feel like you want to have a discussion about this, we can certainly help. If you want to talk to your management, we can help either come to your premises on-premise or in the cloud through some kind of a conference in the web, if you want to do that. And
all right, so while we have that up, if any of you have any questions, you can send them via the console. Remember, you can use the webinar console under questions and answers to submit to us. Yeah, that was the point of the presentation today, to make sure that you don't leave here with any ambiguities, any unanswered questions, any uncertainties whatsoever regarding this product, to make sure that you're clear on which is which you would need and what you need to go move forward. So if you have any questions, feel free to submit them, and we'll do that as we move along.
And while you're submitting your questions, I'll just point out this. We have more solutions on the page, but these are the ones most related to the support of Project Server or Project Online. So you can see our vision step, or our, what we call analysis vision roadmap, or AVR. Certainly programs for training. Project Server deployment, which is this is the V and this is the I. Okay. We have one of the top-selling training guide on Amazon for Project. And if you could read this closely, it would say training and reference for project managers using standard professional server web application and Project Online. Okay. So we've worked with a lot of customers over the years. We're in our 20th year now for being experts in Microsoft Project. Departing gifts. We have a chapter we'll offer to you, which is all about the new reporting in Project 2013, one of the most exciting pieces of Project 2013 besides the cloud. You can get $10 off our book from our Amazon price. We have a half-day training course coming up on resource management. So we got a 20% off on the registration there. There's an Eventbrite registration link. And we'll show you all these links, by the way, for the download of the slide deck, for the promo code, for the chapter, for the half-day, for the how-to videos, can be found on projectassistance.com/webinar. Do we have questions, Dan? I know we're past 4 o'clock, but if you have questions, we'll stay on and answer them. And our next webinar is going to show up here while we're talking about this.
We do have a few questions coming in. In regards to system integration, if I have data, primarily expense, flowing from SAP or Oracle to an on-premise project server, would I still be able to keep this integration with Project Online?
There are ways to pipe data from external sources, and we would have to look specifically at what you're doing, like if it's an Excel sheet or it's a file that you're bringing in. But yes, some of those integrations are possible, and the answer in most cases is through a third-party app, right? So you're not going to get in there and do direct customizations to the environment, but there are. As a matter of fact, I'll just show you a quick example. This application here is a product called EPM Pulse. It's a partner of ours, a partner of Microsoft, that provides an add-in. So I can buy this add-in and get this capability. So you'd have to find the add-in, or we can help you find the add-in for bringing outside files in the format that you're looking for.
Okay. What is the biggest challenge when you implement Project Online?
The biggest challenge when you implement Project Online? they're not that different than project on premises. I think implementing it is the easy part. I think adopting it is the hard part. So you know, and again, it goes back to this question of, are our project managers looking for, I'm sorry, capable of publishing plans? And, you know, for the person that's asking that question, I know, you know, we're discussing with you things like resource management, right? That's in your requirements as a high priority. And we certainly need to have deeper discussions about, are the project managers who are going to be publishing these plans, in fact, ready to make the assignments, to keep the work up to date, which is, in project work is the demand field, right? So that demand field has to be accurate for us to know whether our capacity is available or not. So I think that's the biggest challenge, getting a group of project managers to really use the level of rigor that the organization would like them to use to get the value out of this investment. And I'll follow up with you, Patricia, on that.
If we have Office 365 already built but don't have Project Online, is the cost still the same?
Yes. Yeah. So when you say built, I think you mean subscribed. For Project Office 365, yes, the costs would be the same. Now I'm I'm going to put a but on that, right? If you have an enterprise agreement, those costs are going to be laid out with your agreement with Microsoft. So your costs may be different than what I showed on the screen. I'm showing you the end retail costs, $58, for example, for a project manager who can publish to the server.
Okay. Moving from Project Server on-premise to Project Online, would one be able to keep customizations that were made to the on-premise applications, or would they need to be recreated or tweaked?
The answer is no and no. And let me clarify that. You're not going to move your customizations as is, most likely. Like, for example, and again, this is somewhat of it depends, but I'm assuming you mean you've done things like Visual Basic modifications or custom SQL reporting services. So depending on the level of customization, you're not going to customize Project Online directly. You're going to have to use third-party add-ons. So you may recall when we talked about, for example, integration. I'm going to just sort of pop back there while I'm answering this question, okay? There's more options, it says, on-premise, and the integration you're going to do online is going to rely on third-party packages. So unless the customizations you've done are available in a third-party package, the fast answer is no. We're happy to follow up with you and take a closer look at what those customizations are and let you know if there are third-party applications that can achieve that goal.
Does Project Online offer any advantage to giving vendors access to project info?
When you say vendors, I'm assuming you mean you've got projects and you've got vendors that need to see something in those projects. Like maybe you have a subcontractor that's providing a service to you and they've got a milestone for which they're responsible. The advantage would be, you know, a lot of folks do something they call a DMZ, you know, demilitarized zone for their servers, and they put servers outside the firewall for project web applications for third parties to come in. So those concerns are diminished from the standpoint that it's not, you know, you're not letting them into your entire firewall to access potentially everything that you have on your systems. Microsoft has this, what they call a multi-tenant model, and they've compartmentalized the information. So they're only accessing project information and only to the level that you give them through the security model. So, you know, the typical concern is I bring a vendor on premise in behind my firewall. Good Lord, we don't know if they're going to get beyond the project application or not into our accounting, into our customer information, et cetera, et cetera. So I do think there's a security advantage.
Okay. And this webinar is good for one PDU. If you go to projectassistance.com/webinar, we'll have follow-up information for that as well.
Yes, and by the way, the fast answer is if you do a browser search on Category B PDU, you'll see a detailed instruction from the Project Management Institute that tells you how to claim Category B PDU.
All right, thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks for sticking with us for an extra few minutes while we got through the questions. If you have any other questions, you can email us at dcicala, that's D-C-I-C-A-L-A, projectassistance.com. And you can also go to us at projectassistance.com/webinar to pick up all those gifts. The largest chapter from our book, there's a lot of good stuff there. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, everybody.